Good evening, everyone. It is Nick Lucas here from Influence Faculty, and welcome to this evening presentation on why influence is the X factor in your life, career, and business, and more importantly, how you can actually use influence to really ramp up the success you have, make life quite a bit more easy, which we'll get into as we go through. So what I wanted to do, first of all, was actually start with a bit of a story. And it involves an eviction notice. So we won't take too long with this at all, but I want to tell the story to demonstrate why having influence is so important. So it was many years ago. I owned two healthcare practices in Sydney, and one of them we decided to sell, and we actually had a buyer for that practice. And so it was really important that the sale went through, because both myself and my business partner had taken on other responsibilities and we needed to leave. And also the person who was purchasing the practice had moved their entire life to be over near where our practice was. So it was quite important that this sale went through. I left the practice on the Saturday, and I shut the door for the last time with that feeling of complete relief from having left for the last time and it all be sewn up. Until unfortunately on the Monday morning, I received this eviction notice, and what we found was that the sale of the practice had triggered an addendum, or a clause in an addendum to the lease, which basically meant that the landlord could kick us out and evict us, which is what they did. And this created a whole series of problems. Just quickly, what they were was, one, we'd actually recently refurbished the entire practice, and so we'd taken out a loan to refurbish that practice, and the loan itself was secured to us being in the premises. So as soon as we were to leave, we would be in breach of the loan and have to pay out the full amount of the loan, even though we couldn't take the refurbishment with us. Also, the person who was buying our practice wasn't going to have a practice. The sale would also fall through, because they were buying the practice based on us being in that location, and if we moved, their loan to buy our practice was going to fall over as well. So you can see that this was a terrible situation to be in, and a situation that required me in particular, because I was the one who had to sort it out, to have a lot of influence over an awful lot of people to make that situation work out. So I guess the question for you is, that's just one example from my life of the kinds of things, situations you can find yourself in. And so my question to you would be, what would you do in a situation like that? Maybe you've found yourself in situations like that. Maybe you're in a similar situation right now. What skills do you really draw on that enable you to be highly influential in the negotiations that you have to undertake and in the solutions that you need to find? Because most people, I find, just go along and do the best they can, and they get the outcome that they get because of that. Whereas if they were to really leverage up their skills by learning about influence and persuasion and negotiation, they'd end up getting far greater outcomes. So let's just take it away from a personal story of mine, and let's go into something much larger. And let's look at what IBM found. Now, a while back, about a year or two ago, they completed a rather large study where they did in-depth interviews with just over 1,500 chief executive officers from around the world. And these CEOs were from large organizations and small organizations in a range of different industries. And what they found, what they were looking for was, what were the major issues facing CEOs everywhere? So if you are the CEO of an organization right now, then you will relate to this. But you also need to know that if you're a solo entrepreneur or a solo practitioner or even an employee, there's good sense in you viewing yourself as the CEO of yourself. So really take this to heart with what they found. The three main issues that IBM uncovered were that CEOs were concerned about leadership. They were concerned about this thing they call customer intimacy, which, when you think about it, is a word you wouldn't necessarily associate with business, but customer intimacy. And people skills. And they also were really concerned about a thing they call operational dexterity, which really just means their ability to respond to changes in the market. And what you'll notice about each of those three things, so leadership, customer intimacy, and people skills, and then this operational dexterity, is that each of those things require the CEO to be highly influential in terms of their organization. So influence lies at the core of each of the three major issues that face CEOs all around the world. Let's have a look at another study published a year later. This time IBM went to chief marketing officers, just over 1,700 of them. And they found some slightly different issues facing CMOs. As you'd expect, they've got a different role. One of the biggest issues facing chief marketing officers, and again, think of yourself as a chief marketing officer of your business if you're in a small business, was social media was one of the big issues they were concerned about. The sheer growth of the different number of channels that you can advertise and communicate with your clients or customers with was a major issue for them. And listen to this one. They also cited the need to foster lasting connections before and after someone became their client. So before the sale and after the sale. Or if you're in a consulting practice of any type, before the appointment and after the appointment was this need to foster lasting connections. So if we just go over those, social media and lasting connections with people, at the heart of those two things is influence, because influence is your ability to have an effect on the behavior or the decisions of someone else. And the whole focus here from both the CEOs and the CMOs is this focus on relationship and not just transaction. So this has real applicability to business, but also when you think of it just in our everyday lives, if we've got relationships, we're going to be far more effective excuse me, than if we're just having these transactions with other people. And influence really does lie at the heart of all of that. So let's take it away from the top of the hierarchy, if you like, and let's look at what employees experience. This is another massive study. It's a global workforce study, and looking at employees, they interviewed about 36,000 of them from around the world. And what they found, if you have a look at this chart, which is taken directly from the report, is that only 35% of employees felt highly engaged with their workplace. So if you have any staff at all, this is something to think about. Or if you're an employee, then think about your situation like this. Because 22% felt unsupported, 17% felt detached, and a very large 26% of employees felt disengaged from their place of work. So when you look at it that way, only 35% engaged and the remaining 65% essentially not engaged with their workforce. Now this has massive ramifications for the effectiveness of organizations and for the health and happiness of employees, because if people aren't engaged and they're not feeling happy and they're not feeling like they're fulfilling their long-term goals with their work, then it's actually just not a great place to be in. So of all those slides I've presented, what I'm anticipating is that most of the people on this call are going to relate in some way to one of those stories, because those stories describe all of us. We're all in business or your work, and we're all faced with these issues. What I want you to recognize is that influence really lies at the heart of all this employee engagement as well. Let's look at the 5 key things that employees felt were important in their workplace. And if these 5 things are in place, these are what predict high levels of employee engagement. So the employees needed to feel that they could be proud with and engage with the leadership of the organization they were in. Stress, life balance, work-life balance and their workload was a major issue for employees. Having their goals and objectives known and understood was really important. Their direct relationship with their supervisors, it needed to be a really positive relationship, which again comes down to being influential as a leader. And here's the other thing, the organization's image. They needed to feel proud of and engaged with the organization's image. The image needed to be well received. They wanted to feel proud of who they worked for. And again, that is something that the organization needs to look at from an influence point of view. So what I'm really leading to here is this understanding of why I think influence is the X factor for virtually everything we do when it comes to the business side of life, the work, the career side of life. No matter where you are in the spectrum, as an employee or a business owner or a business leader or an executive, influence is essential in terms of addressing the major issues. So let's jump away from business and let's actually talk about health. And when I talk about health, I mean both physical health and mental health. So we know from reports, and especially if we look at the industrialized nations, that health is a major issue that is becoming an even more major issue as the population ages, as that baby boomer group moves through. It's costing us a fortune, and we know that a lot of the health issues that we face are about behavior. So health professionals and public health authorities are trying to influence the behavior of people in these countries and the populations of nations to try and help prevent the disastrous health consequences that we're all facing. And it's not just, as I said, physical health, it's also mental health. It's mostly stress, anxiety, depression, and then a range of other mental health disorders. But a recent study a while back in Australia showed that about 1 in 10 people were currently experiencing anxiety or depression that was debilitating. So if you think about that, walking down the street, sitting in a food court somewhere, or any kind of crowd, about 1 in 10 of those people are facing serious issues with regard to anxiety and depression. And again, with the number of people on this call, that statistic means that there's going to be people listening on too who are having problems with anxiety and depression. But it's not just mental health, like I said, physical health, the diet, the exercise. How do you influence other people? How do you influence yourself? Because influence isn't just about the effect you can have on other people, it's also about the impact or the influence you can have over yourself. And this draws me then to the really personal question, and that is, if we were to have some kind of medical team taking a good look at you right now, how would you describe your mental health, your physical health? How would you describe the health of the relationships you have? How would you describe your health when it comes to business and your career? Is it on track? Is it going where you'd like it to go? And any change that you would like to make to any of those aspects is going to require you to either influence yourself or to influence other people. This is why influence sits as the absolute X factor to you being able to change anything in your life that you would like to change. Whether it's more sales, whether it's more patient appointments if you're in healthcare, whether it's more client appointments, whether it's changing your lifestyle habits, anything basically requires you to have skills and influence. But it's not something that people know or understand, and it's not widely taught. So in the remainder of this, what will be around about a 45-minute presentation, I'm going to take you through what the basic principles of influence are and how I've come to understand them and use them. And then I'm going to go and give you a specific example about how someone might apply these principles, someone like you might apply these principles to make some pretty radical and fast change and improvement in your particular situation or challenge or whatever it is that you're facing. So I think you'd agree that most people look forward to the future with hope, and we have aspirations and ambitions, and we imagine that there might be something better for us in the future, no matter what stage we're at. Whether it's our career or looking for our business to grow, or our health or our fitness or our relationships, we're all got some element of hope around what's going to happen in the future, and we'd like to be able to have some control over that. The problem is that a lot of people don't have that positive outlook because of the stress they're experiencing and the fact that things aren't going the way they would like. And I've consulted with thousands of people who really do feel like they are unable to control the future. They lack the skills to know how to actually change themselves and change other people. They have a go at it, they have a try at it, and they get some wins and they make some changes, but a lot of people are faced with real stress and anxiety around not being able to change situations, which is again where influence comes in. But it's especially important around changing ourselves, being able to change how we respond and what we're able to do. When it comes to dealing with other people, I think this image here is a very good demonstration of what a lot of people experience when you try to change other people. When you're trying to get other people on board with an idea of yours, any kind of negotiation often looks like this. It's tit for tat. It's, I'm going to take one position, you're going to take the other position, and we're going to go back and forward until we come to some kind of compromise that we agree on, but most likely neither of us is happy with. The other version of this, when it comes to negotiation, is that someone is the clear winner and someone is a clear loser. So often people who have these so-called born negotiation skills, it's often because they're great at being a bit of a bully, and they go in and they are really, really hard negotiators on the people, and they get what they want, but it's often at the expense of the other person. And so while they might have won that particular negotiation, what they've done is they've basically left another casualty. Now, many people have experienced being the casualty at the end of a negotiation like this type of thing, where you're not sure how to engage with someone who's a hard negotiator, and you end up getting worse off. So this could be that you paid too much for a house, you paid too much for a car, you had some other form of legal negotiation and you came off worse off, or whatever it might be. Which is again why learning about influence, the general principles, enables you to deal with situations like this in a completely different way, and that's what we're going to go ahead and talk about. Because instead of that picture, that image of the battle, wouldn't it be fantastic if there were a way to approach all of this and make it work effortlessly, and make it work in a way that there was win-win, make it work in a way that you felt inspired and happy and empowered by it all. And the key to it, which is what this image is displaying, well, the key to it is knowing what the key is. So let me just explain this diagram or this image and why I've put it up. We're looking at a system, right? And there's a golden key in one cog and it's locked. It doesn't matter if I polish the other cogs. The system's not going to work any better if that one with a key in it is stuck. It doesn't matter if I try and turn the other cogs. The system isn't going to work because the one cog with the key in it is locked. And what happens, and you might recognize this in your own life, is that if you spend all this time trying to polish the other cogs and turn them, you get exhausted, you don't really get anywhere, and there's hardly any effort left to turn the one cog with the key in it that matters. And so one of the first things to look at when you are trying to figure out how to be more influential is to try and understand in a given situation, what is the absolute key thing that is important in this situation? What's the key thing? What is the, some people call it the key constraint. What's the limiting factor in the situation I've got? And rather than spending any time or effort on anything else, you throw everything you've got at turning that key. Because when you turn that key, the system starts working. Now, of course, you might then discover there's other things that need fixing, and you discover the next key that you need to turn. And that's all about the continuous pursuit of improvement, is always finding what the constraint or the limitation is in a situation, changing it, and then finding the next one and changing that and improving it. And I will give you a concrete example of this after we've got through this conceptual stuff. So first things first are, look at your situation, whatever it is you're facing, and try and discern, if you can, what you think the real key is. And then you want to throw all your available resources at shifting that key. So now we get into the actual influence part of it. Let's presume I've identified the key and you now need to influence it. Now, the first person that you need to influence is yourself. And you need to have a think about what your current skills are and what your level of motivation is. So I'm going to now give you an honest insight into human behavior from having spent over a decade working with people trying to help them change their behavior. Most people try to change their behavior by relying on their motivation. And what happens is that when the motivation fluctuates, waxes and wanes, when it dips, all of a sudden people lose the very reason they had to make the change because their motivation is gone, and so therefore the change goes. And this happens like in a cycle over and over again. So people rely on their motivation, they get something motivates them, they read a book, they hear a speaker, whatever it might be, they get motivated to make a change, and they go about making the change until their motivation drops, and then it's gone. And what they do is that they attribute that failure to make a change. They think and they blame themselves and they say, it's just because I'm not motivated. It's because I lack willpower. Now this might be, let's just say that you've been to see your doctor recently and they want you to start having a better diet. And you have a go for a few days, and before you know it, you're eating stuff you shouldn't be eating again. And you just tell yourself it's because you lack willpower. And you blame yourself because you actually don't know what else to blame. And it makes sense for you to blame yourself unless you really understand all the forces that are operating against you to stop you changing your habit. And we'll get into those. But just relying on motivation isn't enough. If you work with clients at all and you're looking to get better results with your clients, you know that their motivation isn't enough. And you know that you can't lend them your enthusiasm or your motivation either. It only lasts for a short time and it goes away, which is why you then end up not having the success that you might get with your clients. And so understanding that it's got to be about skills and it's got to be about motivation is one of the key things. So let me talk about that for a moment with skills. Let's just say that someone's trying to influence someone at work. And it always ends up in a debate that then turns into an argument. It never gets resolved, and both parties walk away feeling diminished and stressed, and they don't want to have to talk about it again. One of those people might get really motivated to go and solve it and resolve this issue, and they go back and they try again, but yet again it ends up in a debate that turns into an argument that ends up in them walking away diminished. It doesn't matter how motivated that person is to see a resolution. If they don't have the skills to avoid the debate and avoid the things that trigger the argument, it's going to happen over and over again. And so the person has to develop, in that case, the key behavior, if we're talking about keys, in that case, the key behavior they would need to change about themselves is recognizing exactly when it's shifting from debate into argument, and at that crucial point, changing their behavior or having the skills to change their behavior so that it doesn't always eventuate in the argument. That's one very practical example of how you have to have skills as well as motivation. Now those skills might be negotiating skills. Those skills might simply be learning how to take a deep breath and not lose it and get angry, which is a skill that can be practiced. So what I hope I'm getting you here to see is that influence isn't just about the impact you can have on other people. It's the impact that you can have on yourself. And the two key things you need are skills and your own levels of motivation. Now, when it comes to motivation, there are techniques you can use to keep your motivation at a high level, which is critical to do. And there's an entire weekend workshop where we talk about how to do that. So it's kind of a bit difficult to go into it now. But just understand that if you've ever faced trying to change or trying to influence something and you feel like you've failed at it, it's likely not because you're not motivated. You are motivated. It's just that your motivation probably waxes and wanes, and you may not have had the skills to actually deal with the situation. So that's the first element of influence is you. You know, what are your skills and what's your motivation? And this image is basically just demonstrating the male version of this image, right? Which is someone contemplating their skills and motivation. So once, well, hang on, let me just be really clear here. If you're sitting and you're thinking about this and you're taking any notes and you want to get something out of this, just write down what are my skills and what's my level of motivation, and really ask yourself, do you have the skills to make the change you're currently looking for in your life? Is that something you've addressed adequately? And if you haven't, then think about how you might get those skills. Okay, so now we move on to what most people think of influence, and we'll call that social influence. That's your ability to influence other people, illustrated by this diagram, by the image that's in red. And it's called social influence, and there is a whole entire science now around the ability to influence other people. There's been about 30 to 40 years now of really in-depth social psychology and social research looking at why we have an impact on other people, the kinds of things that influence other people. And just out of interest, the last few times in the history of written discovery that influence was studied in detail were in a number of other centuries. And in each of those centuries where people really began to study social influence, in the end, the government had those masters of influence killed, because having the ability to influence others represents having incredible power. And so that's why they had them killed pretty much. So don't worry, we live in an enlightened times, at least where we are in the world, so you're not going to experience any danger from learning how to influence other people. But I wanted to give that background to illustrate just how powerful it is when you learn about these types of tactics. And I might just run through, in the time that I've got, just three things that you can focus on that have an impact on other people. And you might recognize these as being obvious, but even though they're obvious, when I go through them, very few people apply them consistently, and very few people apply all three of them, and very few people apply them in the right order. So let's just go through what they are. The first one you might want to note down is relationship. What relationship do you have with the people that you're trying to influence? If you don't have any relationship, you're not going to have much influence at all. And so then the question becomes, well, how do I develop relationship? And there are two key things that enable you to develop relationship. One of them is likability, and the other is what they call the reciprocity effect. So let's just talk quickly about likability. Likability is when people like you, but more importantly, and this is where most people don't realize it, more importantly, when they feel like you, as if you like them. So let's get that clear. If you want to influence people, those people need to like you, but more importantly, they need to feel that you like them. So think about that in any situation you've got right now. Do the people, or does the person that you're trying to influence feel that you like them? Now, often in negotiations where it's going wrong, that's the last thing they feel. They don't feel like that you like them at all, and you might not like them that much. This is where it becomes very strategic, because if you can find a way to like something about the people you're trying to influence, then you'll be far more effective at it, because they will get the sense that you do like them. So that's likability. And there's a whole lot of things you can do to increase your likability, and they'd be things that you'd be aware of. Things like praising people with legitimate compliments is a great way that people will then like you. And then there's a whole lot of other ones, but I want you to get the general principle here of liking. The other is reciprocity in terms of building relationship. Reciprocity is when you give something to somebody and it's given in such a way where there's no strings attached, as much as you can possibly do that. When you do that for people, it increases relationship. And so if you are looking to influence somebody or a group of people, the first things you need to be asking yourself is, do I have good relationship with them? And have I created this feeling of reciprocity? Have I given them things first so that they, number one, increases likability, and two, feel a sense of wanting to return the favor? So two really important questions. Is the likability factor been triggered, and has the reciprocity factor been triggered? So I said there were three things. I've covered one of them, and that's relationship. The very next thing, once you've got relationship sorted out, is certainty. I might have a good relationship with you. I might feel like I even owe you a favor, but if I'm not certain about the outcome, if I'm not certain about you, then that is going to be an obstacle, and I need to correct that. So let's just say that you're trying to influence someone and you've built a relationship, but they're really just not convinced at all that what you're suggesting is the right thing to do. They're uncertain as opposed to certain. And so then you need to look at what you can do to increase certainty. And the way you do that, in general terms, there's two key things that do it. First is called the consensus effect, and the other is the authority effect. So let me quickly go through what these are. The consensus effect is this. It's when many other similar people like me are doing something, I'm going to become more certain about it. So if we frame that from your perspective, if you're trying to influence a group of people and you can't point to anybody else who's doing that, then they are going to be very uncertain about the behavior or the thing that you want them to do. If, on the other hand, you can point to a lot of other people who are similar to them who are doing it, then they will have increased certainty around it. And this is a very well established and documented process. It's the whole example of the person who stands on the corner and looks up into the sky. If one person does it, virtually no one else walks past and looks up into the sky. But if there are 4 or 5 people standing all in a group and they all look pretty much the same and they're all looking up into the sky, then it attracts this huge crowd. That's just one example, but this whole principle of consensus, this feeling where lots of other people like me are doing something, has been demonstrated in so many different contexts that it is a proven principle. So the key thing there is, for consensus, is, are there many other people who are like me who are doing something? And then I'm going to be far more convinced and more certain about it. That's number one. The second thing is the authority effect. Is there someone who is an authority who should know? What do they say about it? What do they think? And the authority effect is triggered by a range of things, but things like being certified, having a title, having qualifications, being a member of a group. Even things like the clothes you wear and the car you drive can have an impact on authority. Just as one quick example of how ridiculous this can be. They got someone they wanted to study the effect that just clothing could have on group behavior. And so they got someone to dress in very casual clothes. They looked like a uni student, and this person at various intersections would walk against the pedestrian crossing light when it was red, when they shouldn't have walked. And what the researchers were doing were measuring how many other people in the vicinity followed them across. And when it was the person dressed in the casual uni clothes, virtually no one followed. That same person got dressed in a business suit, and when they walked across the road against the lights, essentially breaking the law, a significant number of other people saw them and then followed them across. So for whatever reason, the other people, the random strangers, viewed the person in the suit as having more authority and therefore followed them across the road. And this has been replicated over and over again. So something as simple as the clothing that you wear can have a massive impact in terms of the influence that you have on other people. So that's the authority effect. So let's just sum up where we're up to. If you're trying to influence others, you first need to have relationship. Then you need to increase their certainty about what you're asking or what you're suggesting that they do. And the way you increase that certainty is with consensus and by being able to establish your authority as the person they should listen to, or at least establish that other authorities are doing the action and recommend it as well. Once you've got those in place, then you begin to have certainty. The last thing is then motivating people to action. So I said there were three things. Okay, the first is relationship, the second is certainty, and the third is motivating action. So when it comes to motivating action, there are two things that trigger it. One is called the consistency principle, and the other is scarcity or exclusivity. Now let's think about why you might need this. Let's just say that you want to influence a group of people or a person, and that person, by the way, could be your child or your partner or spouse or whatever. Let's just say that you've got a relationship with them and it's good. They agree that your idea is a great idea, so they've got certainty, but for whatever reason they still don't take the action, which is the final rubber hits the road thing. You want them to take some action. And this is where you need to have then what they call the principle of consistency and also scarcity. Let me talk you through what these two are quickly. Consistency is when people want to be consistent with who they or their view of themselves. They want to be consistent with their values. They want to be consistent with what they've committed to in the past. And the greater the commitment it is, the more public the commitment, then the more consistent they will want to be with it. So you know yourself, if you make a commitment quietly in your mind to do a certain thing, then you might not follow through. If you make a public commitment in front of a lot of other people and attach other things or other consequences to that public commitment, you're far more likely to be consistent with it. So when we're actually looking for somebody to change, let's just throw out an example. Let's just say it's a health effect. I might have been wanting somebody, let's just give a typical generalized example here of a guy who's mid-40s who hasn't exercised since he was at university. He's got way too much weight, he's unfit, unflexible, he sits for 12 to 14 hours a day, he then has a 1-hour commute either direction, and when he tries to run with his kids on the weekend, he basically gets puffed after about 5 steps. Now, when I'm coaching or been consulting with someone like that in the past, part of my consultation would be getting them to talk about the kind of person they want to be, talk about the kind of person they want to be for their children, get them to use a lot of value-based words around the kind of dad they want to be, what kind of future they want to have. And then when I end up prescribing the change or the behavior that I'd want them to do, I would remind them of those commitments, and I would get them to talk to me about those again at that key point. Because what they're then doing is they're anchoring this decision they're making to take the behavior, to change, they're anchoring that to these values they've got, to a commitment that they've made, to the kind of person that they are. And what this does is has a big impact on their decision to actually say, yes, I am going to change. And if I can do a full circle here, right back to when I talked about your own levels of motivation, one of the key ways to maintain a high level of motivation for change is to really anchor your desire to change to a whole lot of value-based statements around the kind of person that you want to be, that you believe you are, or that you believe you should become. So that's one of the key ways that we can get people to influence themselves, by really boosting their levels of motivation. So that's the principle of consistency, being consistent with who you want to be and the public commitments you've made. The other is scarcity. Essentially, humans are motivated by a loss of something or a lack of something. It's just part of our nature and our physiology. So if there's limited numbers of something, or if there is a limited time for something, or if something about the information is exclusive, then we're far more likely to be motivated to action. Whereas if I can just make a choice any old time, the opportunity is not going to go, I can take it up whenever I'd like, then I'm less likely to take action. So what I'd ask you to do is to think about something in your life right now, whether it's your personal life or your business or career, whatever challenge it is you're facing, whoever it is that you're looking to influence, and ask yourself, do I have relationship with these people or this person? Have I created certainty around my idea so they feel confident in the idea? They're certain about it. And lastly, have I framed this to them, this decision for them to change? Have I done it in a way that makes it urgent for them to do? And have I made that change to be consistent with the kind of person that they say they want to be? Now, you can use all of these things to put a lot of pressure on people, which is exactly what I don't advocate here at Influence Faculty. This is all about really helping empower people to make the best choices for them and that create win-win situations. So if you're in business, then obviously your product or your service is going to be an absolute benefit. That's the given. It has to be an absolute benefit for people. It has to transform them and have a great impact on their life, which is why you would then ethically be able to use these three approaches to get the change that we're looking for. And if you're not getting the change, then you have to have on the cap of the doctor, the diagnostician, and say, well, look, if I want someone to change and they're not even returning my calls, then I probably don't have any relationship with them at all. Or if I want someone to change and they return my calls but they're really uncertain about it, then I need to work on increasing their certainty. Because if they're not even certain and you ask them to buy from you or book in with you or make a change, but they're not certain about it, then they're not going to go ahead and make the change. So this gives you kind of a way to diagnose the situation you're in and see what you need to tweak. What's the key? What is the cog in the system that you need to tweak that's really going to make the difference? And so those three things, again, are relationship, certainty, and motivating action. That's covering off social influence. But there's one more domain of influence that I want to talk about that most people don't really think about, although it will all make perfect sense to you when you see it. And that is that we all live in an environment. We have space all around us, and there are things in that space. Things like signs, green open spaces, buildings, the chairs we sit in, the tables we have, the orientation, the layout of our rooms, all kinds of things in our environment have this invisible impact on us as we go through our daily life. Let me give you a very obvious example. Let's just say that I'm trying to give up junk food, but every time I walk home, I walk past McDonald's. Well, the very fact that I walk past McDonald's increases the chance I'm going to walk in there. That's my space. If I were to choose to walk home a different way that didn't involve me walking past McDonald's, then I'm far less likely to walk into McDonald's. The amount of influence these environmental things have on us is huge. Let me give you another example. If I'm at the supermarket and there are certain things placed at the counter, I'm more likely to buy them just because they're placed there. Not because I want them, not because I need them, not because there's a sales message, not because I've gone in and specifically said I need X, Y, and Z, simply because it is positioned at that counter when I've got my wallet out and I'm in a buying mood, means I'm more likely to buy them. Let me give you another example. One more, because I think this really illustrates the point. Let me just tell you the story. They got a large group of boys, about 10 or 11-year-olds who just finished playing baseball. Big group of them. And they all came back to the big baseball club. And they were all very hungry after playing baseball. And there were two rooms, and these boys were randomly allocated to go to room A or room B. And in room A and B was a huge big dish of macaroni cheese, and the boys were told to eat as much as they wanted to eat until they were content, and then they didn't have to eat anymore. But they were allowed to have whatever they wanted and just told to eat until you're full and that's it. And so that's what the boys did. What they measured was how much each boy ate in each room. And because they were all randomly assigned there, there was no big difference between room A and room B, except that room B ate almost 50% more food than was my timer going off? Excuse me. 50% more food than room A. So why did the boys in room B eat 50% more food than in room A? And the only difference was the size of the plates that they had in each room. In room A, they were given a 9-inch plate, and in room B, they were given a 12-inch plate. So just the size of the plate had an impact on the physiology of these boys about when they felt like they'd eaten enough food or not, when they felt full or not, which is a function of the brain. Now, when you're walking around in your daily life, there's all these things and objects, and they're all having a massive impact on you. They're all having a massive influence on you. And if you're not aware of it, then you might be having all kinds of behaviors that are not because you're not motivated, but because these things have this hidden influence on you. So what we want to do, if you want to maximize your influence, as I sum this up, is say that there are 3 key areas you need to look at if you want to be influential. The first is you need to examine yourself, your skills, and your motivation. We talked about that. The next thing is really looking at how you would influence other people. And we talked about 3 key things there. We talked about relationship, certainty, and motivating action. And then we just talked briefly about the impact of the things in our space, in our environment, and the impact that that has on us, often when we don't even know about it. So if you were to try and influence other people, how would you use those 3 things? You'd work on your own skills and motivation, you'd work on influencing them, and you would try and create an environment, the things around them, that would lead them to change. I'll give you another very practical example. When you go to a website and you buy something from that website, did you know that the color of the button that you click on is having an impact on your buying decision without you even knowing it? If you want to know about this, go and look at Amazon. They study this like you would not believe, because they want to maximize sales, and so they want to see what things in this person's space can we put around them that lead to increased sales. Is it an orange button or a green one that says continue? So these are the things that are really important for you to understand, so that you can build an influence project that is going to really, really change the results that you get if you were to apply it. Okay, I'm now going a little over time, but there is just a few more slides to go through as I give you a very tangible example around how you would apply this. And it really comes down to personal success. So again, if you are an employee and you're looking to succeed, if you're a business leader, if you've got your own small business, you're an entrepreneur, if you're looking to succeed, you need to be what this slide says, and that is you need to be different. If you're just the same as everyone else, then no one knows why they should come and see you. There's no point of difference, so you need to be different. And this is something that's very well known. You know, Seth Godin wrote about it in his famous book called The Purple Cow. How are you different? Why should I come and see you? Why should I give you a promotion? Why should I give you the deal? Why should I come and consult with you? So I'm going to give you 3 things that are proven to make a difference, because it's not just enough to say we need to be different. We need to understand what kind of different do we need to be. The first one is this, and this is derived from a number of studies in the US looking at what predicts people's rapid success. The first is you need to be preeminent. If we look at it as an adjective there, it says surpassing all others and being very distinguished in some way. It basically means you have to be good at what you do. You can't be average at what you do. You have to be not even good, you need to be great at what you do. Now that's something that only you can influence, and that comes down to your motivation and your skills, if we want to look at it and anchor back to what we talked about. So think about yourself right now. Are you preeminent? Do you have skills that surpass all others? Or is the way you offer your skills and the way you offer what it is you do in some way distinguished from other people? It's critical, if you want great success, no matter what you do, that you strive to be preeminent. Otherwise, you will just be like the average, like everyone else, and you'll just get average results. And that's just the way it works. That's number 1, preeminence. The second is, funnily enough, you need to work on the right things. And that specifically means outcomes that matter for other people. If you are expert at something, if you have preeminence in something, but no one is interested in it, it doesn't matter to anybody else, then you're not going to succeed. You have to work on the things that matter to other people. So if you're consulting patients, you need to figure out what is important to the patient and make sure they get that outcome. If you do that, that's when you're going to get incredible results, great referrals, really happy patients, because you're working on the things that matter to them. If you are an employee and you need to get promoted and get that next thing, then make sure that you are working on things that matter to your boss, to your managers. Make sure that all the effort you're putting in is related to something that they actually need. It sounds like common sense, but often isn't. People often don't do it. That's number two. Even those two together aren't enough. So being preeminent and working on things that matter aren't enough. They won't make you stand out. The next thing is this, your reputation. What are they saying about you? So if you were to take an audit of yourself right now and your reputation, what do people say? How do they view you? What's the gossip on you? Why do they refer patients to you or clients to you? Or why, if you're in an organization, do people say you should go and see John or you should go and see Sarah? What are they saying about you? There's a very, very key thing they need to be saying about you. And this is key. You have to have a reputation as being an expert who is generous with their time. So when it comes to it, this third thing is you need to have a reputation as being an expert who is generous with your time. So if we go back through the three, just so you make sure I've got your list there, the three things you need to be if you want to have rapid success here is be preeminent, work on the right things that matter to other people, and make sure you've got a reputation as being an expert who is generous with your time. Is that what people would say about you now? And when you think about that statement there, a reputation as an expert, which is an authority, who is generous with your time, which builds relationship. Both of those things really essential from an influence point of view, and also been found in studies as to be what predicts people who become superstars quickly in organizations and in business. That's the kind of different that you need to be. And you can take these three things with you now for the rest of your entire life, no matter what you try and do, whether it is a volunteer work at the school that your children go to, whether it is you as a leader in a multi-million-dollar organization. It doesn't matter. They're the three things you need to look at improving in order to begin to get the success you're not getting. So I would say, as we draw to a close here, within the hour, so it's been not too bad, your takeaway actions, if I was to suggest them to you, is that influence, mind, and behavior change need a holistic approach. You can't just rely on your willpower. You can't just rely on your ability to argue the point. Both of those things are terrible at really being able to get the changes that you want, because they're not effortless. They take effort. They're unpleasant. So you need that holistic approach. That holistic approach involves something I call me, which is your skills and motivation. So when you're thinking about yourself as in me, it's like, what are my skills? What's my motivation like? And if you need to increase your motivation, anchor it to values that you hold very important to yourself. Identify the skills that you need. And if they're absent, then you're not going to succeed. You need to get those skills. The next thing is social influence and social structure. And we talked about the three key things of social influence being relationship, certainty, and motivating action, and how to know which one to tweak in a given situation. The third thing there is space, the things around you. You know, I was with someone the other day, and this person is creating an amazing online business. She's a coach, and it is a global brand that is about to launch, being so well received. Anyway, I'm really helping her out with a lot of stuff. And we sat down to do a working bee, and I was watching her on her computer. It was an old PC. And it was slow, it was clunky, some of the software was out of date. And, you know, I think that one thing has been the biggest obstacle to her moving forward as fast as she could move. And that would fall in the environment there of space. The things in her environment having a massive influence on her success was a slow old computer. The number of people I see on slow old computers that give them grief, whereas they would experience so much more success with computers if they just went and bought a brand new computer that was really fast. So that's just one really practical example about how important the things in your environment can have an impact on you. The specific application I gave you was of someone who wants to have rapid success, and that is you need to be good at what you do. You have to have preeminence. You have to make sure you're working on the key thing, the right thing. And you need to develop that reputation as an expert who is generous with your time. So they're your takeaway actions to think about. If we go right back to the beginning here, we talked about IBM and the study of their CEOs and influence being at the heart of every issue that they're facing. We talked about the study of chief marketing officers and influence being at the heart of virtually everything that they were facing. We talked about employees and employee engagement and how influence is at the heart of virtually everything that determines their levels of engagement. We talked about health, physical health and mental health, and how behavior change and influence is at the heart of people living healthier and happier lives. That's why, for me, influence is the X factor, and I hope I've really been able to demonstrate that for you in this presentation. Now, if we just quickly go back to the story I started with, which is the eviction notice, I'll just close that loop for you because we were given 30 days notice. There was a lot of money on the line because not only was I facing losing the sale of the practice because the buyer wouldn't be able to buy it, I was also facing the loss of the practice because I wasn't going to be able to operate the practice from that premises anymore. And I felt a responsibility to the buyer because they'd moved their life to be close to that practice, and they were going to lose out on an income. So there was a lot at stake. Anyway, the upshot is within 30 days, instead of losing everything, I was able to purchase another business very close by. I was able to negotiate the lease of that with the landlord. I was able to negotiate with the buyer, like the buyer of the practice. I was able to negotiate with their lender that they'd still be able to get the loan. I was able to negotiate with the person who'd loaned us the money to refurbish the practice. I told you about that. I was able to renegotiate with them new terms so that we could pay it off slowly. And within 30 days, we had evicted from that place, re-established the business. We actually grew the business because we purchased another business. And it took longer to get out than I would have liked, but the fact is I didn't lose anything. In the end, with the tax concessions that happened, we came out at about even. And we were facing financial disaster, not just for one person, but for a number of people. And so that is the importance of influence. That is the difference it can make. It can make the difference between fortune and hopelessness, losing everything. It can make the difference and mean the difference between life and death, literally, because of choices and behaviors that people make. That's how important influence is. That's why I'm so absolutely passionate about helping people maximize their ability to influence, because I really do believe it brings them health, happiness, and profit in their business and their career. So that's essentially the end of the presentation. I do have something else just to mention to you about what I'm doing with people and how I'm helping them move forward, because time is not slowing down. There isn't a better time than now to learn more about this and learn how to apply it specifically to the situation you're in. And it can be tailored, obviously, to your situation. What you need to tweak might be different to somebody else. I've got two programs that I'm running at the moment. One is a program that's really helping people develop their business. It's a very business-focused program. But with that, I don't believe you can have a successful business if you also don't have other things in place like your health and your relationships and that work-life balance. And so that's also a part of what we're doing. It's an 8-week program. It's actually just started this week, and it's fantastic. The group of people doing it are fantastic. And if you're in a situation right now where you would like to grow your business, then what you need to do is either contact me at Facebook .com/Nick Lucas, or you can go to that web address there, influencefaculty.com/strategy session, and just apply for a strategy session to speak with me, because there's no way I would prescribe anything for you until I've first gone through some kind of session with you to find out exactly what you need and if what I offer is actually a good fit for it. So what I'm doing is just making this offer for you now. If you'd like to get in contact with me to talk about your specific situation, then that's definitely something that I can do. The other thing I have really isn't for most people at all. It's an annual coaching program. It's high level. The people in it are really growing global businesses, and just on the off chance that there is someone here who needs that and would fit into that category, then again we'd need to have a discussion about that to see how if you'd fit into that at all, and whether you'd be someone I'd be prepared to take on in that kind of capacity. But I just wanted to make you aware that both of those options are available. They're what I'm doing now through part of Influence Faculty, and if you do need my help, I would love the opportunity to, first of all, just talk about it with you and help you understand how you might address your situation better. And if it then were to turn out that we could do some work together, then we'd address that at that particular time. So either of those two options below are absolutely fine for you to get in contact with me, and we could take it from there. But other than that, I really hope that you have enjoyed the presentation. I know that if you take what I've shown you and you apply it to your life, that you will get immediately different results, better results, by applying systematically what I've taken you through, without doubt. And so I'd love to hear back from you as well. So if you are connected with me on Facebook, then please let me know. Again, the address is there. If you visit the Influence Faculty blog, you could leave a comment, send me an email, whichever way you'd like to get in contact with me. I'd love to hear your feedback. And we will be running more events like this because my aim is to really, as I said, help you maximize your ability to influence in whatever situation you face. Again, I'm Nick Lucas from Influence Faculty, and I will see you again soon on another webinar.